Alrighty. All right. So I expect some more people to come in late because I did send it out very last minute this time. Apologize for that. This shouldn't happen again. I'm actually halfway done with my cellular one. So I just ran into some issues with the Mars stuff, of course, because it is the Mars stuff, and the Mars stuff is um, it is what it is. There's really not. Oops, that shouldn't be there. It should be over here. Okay. So there really isn't much I can uh, do about that. It has a lot to do with the kind of energies that came up as I was putting this together today. So it's I want to say it's not my fault. It is entirely my fault. I was not prepared. I was not what's the word? Uh, uh, Disciplined, I think is the right word. So let me just own that and go with that. All right, so today we're going to be talking about Mars. Last time we talked about Jupiter, and we went over what the second sphere in the chain of manifestation did. It was about benefit, blessing, and expansion. It was all about making everybody be happy. It was the greater benefic. It was the greater blessing. It was all about making sure that you're enjoying your life and filling up the boundaries. And in the first sphere of Saturn, you get all of your boundaries put in place, and then in Jupiter, those spheres are expanded and expounded on, or I'm sorry, those boundaries are filled up with all the blessings and the manifestations that you're going to receive. It's a good sphere for applying all of the expansion and the blessings that you have for other people. Let's see, we got some stuff here in the chat. Hey everyone. Okay, so if you need to ping me throughout the thing, do go ahead and send me messages, and I will try to answer them as breaks allow. I'm going to, let's see, I need to get to the participants real quick. And mute all, okay. And now we will carry on then. Okay, so, right, so in Saturn, we had all of our boundaries and our foundation set. And then in Jupiter, we have it filled up with all the blessings and all the good things. Excuse me. And then in Mars, it applies form and structure to it and discipline. So like in Jupiter, all those things start to expand and go in every direction, and it starts to really fill up all the boundaries that were laid in Saturn. But then that giant expansion can kind of get out of hand and sort of get out of control. And so what the forces of Mars do then is sort of apply structure, and not necessarily structure, but guidance. Like all those forces of Jupiter start getting pointed into a specific direction. Think of it like a bunch of blessings and a bunch of good stuff gets expressed from the sphere of Jupiter, and then it hits the sphere of Mars and it gets focused, right? So it's like light source, and then it hits the lens, and then that lens focuses it and makes it more direct. It applies basically just discipline and willpower. It's the realm of fear. It's the realm of war and strife and conflict, and these are the things that we run into when we try to shape things. Like so, when you take a block of wood and you're going to carve it into some kind of form, you start chiseling it off. You've got your metal chisel, and that's very martial, anything iron and steel that you use to cut things. You're chiseling away at it and you're exposing the form, but it's a struggle. You're actually doing violence to this thing. If you're chiseling marble, you're going to do violence to it. If you're engraving something, you're doing violence to that thing, but you're making it look what it's supposed to look like. It shapes it, it carves it, it makes it take on the form of what it is that you're trying to express. So an idea can't really express itself unless it has an element of violence to it. Because when we take our place in this world, we're taking the place of what could be somebody else, right? It could be very well, this space could be occupied by anybody else that had the money for it, right? My house, my office, my sitting here in front of you, any other teacher on the planet could actually be doing this. It's just I'm the one that had to be here, and for me to be here, I had to take somebody else's place, right? I'm taking up your time today. That's me taking that, and you're giving it to me, but I'm the one that's absorbing that time, and you're doing it as a result of me. So I'm cutting into other things that you want to do, and it's a give and a take. There's an exchange of things. That's a very martial thing, is the negotiations for peace, the way that we all get along with one another, even though one person is taking something from someone else. There's a negotiation that goes along there. There's a capitulation. There's a recognition that what we're doing is part of a greater whole, right? So it's not just all about us. It's discipline and sort of not uh, not always going after what you personally want for the good of everybody else. So it's like self-discipline and taking yourself to bear. So you're not you're not like being overly expansive yourself. You're not overrunning everybody and just being like the Jupiter forces, pouring out into everything and ruining things along the way. um where Saturn, so when we look at the big bads versus the little bads, Saturn is the greater malefic, right? Jupiter is the greater benefic. These two forces are the greater of things, right? And by greater, we think, bigger and stronger and more powerful. And that's true. They are great that way. But as I was reading through this stuff on Mars, one of the things that popped out to me is that it's not just greater, it's also more noble and more impactful and more life-changing. So like in Saturn, a negative thing is like death. It's the end. It's the end of all things. It's the end of your comfort zone. It's the termination, right? But in in uh in okay, so over in Jupiter, it's the big good, right? It's the great big blessings. It's the fortune and the fortunate favor and the love of God, right? All of that stuff. It's huge that impacts your entire life from beginning to end and even on to what's beyond those things. But then the lesser malefic is more concerned with what happens inside your life, like the Saturnian big bad is going to impact things across the theme of your existence. The Martial little bad is just going to impact like this month, next month. It's going to be the drama that you're facing right now and the conflicts that you face right now. The negative things that are going on in your daily life that are temporary are under Mars. The negative things in your life that are ongoing and chronic and are going to be around you forever, that's Saturn, right? Saturn is the greater evils. Mars is the lesser evils. In the same way, Jupiter is the greater good and Venus is the lesser good, right? So it's like you got to keep these things in mind when we go forward to the next phases. But anyway, that's how that kind of works with the greater and the lesser, right? He's also the god of war, right? Mars is the god of all warfare. He's the embodiment, the personification of war itself. And I just said it's like lesser evils versus greater evils. And war is certainly not a minor or petty thing. But a lot of the things that Aries does and rules and takes care of are very petty and minor, it seems like, when you read through the myths. Just not very I don't know how to put it. Just they aren't really about long-term things. And if you look at the war that's going on over in Ukraine, I use that as an example in this because it's a war of aggression, right? And there's this phrase that they say that all wars are resource wars. It's all about resources, and the idea is that over in Ukraine they've got Putin is trying to take advantage of he's trying to plunder Ukraine and get those resources, but they don't really need it. The whole reason they invaded was because the oligarchs convinced Putin that they should do it. They appealed to his urge, his ego to become the czar. He's really down on the fall of the USSR and the whole Soviet thing. He thought that was really cool, and so he thinks that Russia should be, the motherland. It's great. It should be there for everybody, and it should be a world power. And they appealed to that. And these oligarchs, they just wanted all the wealth and resources. So they're like, yes, we should totally do that. And he's like, yes, we should totally do that. But it's kind of petty when you look at it. When it gets down to the actual reasons that they did the invasion, it wasn't just because they needed it. It wasn't because there was actually any kind of principles. It's not about the Nazification of Crimea or anything like that. It's entirely just about the resources. And it's petty. It's petty greed and it's petty pride. It's just basic selfishness, and that's what Mars sort of rules over. It's not the end of all things. It's just tormenting and causing pain and strife and suffering for personal reasons that aren't really justifiable at all. Mars is like the egotistical, the petty, the tyrannical, the headstrong warlord who rules by might. We'll talk a little bit more about might versus right and how Mars is very much just that. It's not about justice at all. That's something that I think we need to touch on, because a lot of people go to Mars seeking justice, right? Because if you look at the path on the tree of life between the sun and Mars, you see the justice card in the tarot, in the Cabalistic interpretations of this all thing that we do. And the idea is that you go to Mars for justice, and that's not true. It's not a just sphere. It's an angry sphere. It's a forceful sphere. It's a frightening sphere. It's what you have to be afraid of in this world. It's man's inhumanity to man. It's the injustices that we face in the societal world, and it's fighting against those, but it's also the essence of those too, right? It's entirely about violence and force, the violent actions of existence that are necessary for us to exist. And we got to remember, this is necessary. It's a part of existence. It's not something that's optional. Right? War is, we don't have to go to war. Like, we could just decide to all be good all the time, right? In theory, but in practice, we don't do that. And if you go through your day to day, there's going to be a moment where you're angry at something that's stupid. I get angry at stupid things all the time. I get angry at big things that are I get violently angry about these things. I have very hard, like my Mars is in, crap, I can't remember where my Mars is. Holy crap. Anyway, wherever my Mars is, it makes it very hard for me to control my anger. It gets out of hand, and it just, I rage, it's like I'm the road rage guy. I'm like fairly typical of that, it's just sort of how I am with things like that. But at the same time, I get really angry about social injustices. I'm very, I'm not interested in there being, no, it's not Mars and Scorpio. I should know this. It's like, I think it's in Cancer, to be honest, but it's something about, it's the house of my passion. So whichever sign rules over your emotions and stuff like that. It's probably Cancer, if I remember right. Oh yeah, that's Cancer. My Mars is in Cancer. So I have very active and fiery emotions, and my emotions are very fueled by that expansive heat, that fiery heat of whatever. I love strong, but I also very much am angry, very, very angry about things. I have rage issues. Yeah, so these things are part of our daily lives, right? It's something that happens. We get mad, and that's an expression of Mars. So anytime you're angry about things, that's what Mars is. And sometimes your anger is righteous and valid and should be expressed. And other times it's not. It's unjust, it's immoral, it's impure, it's just for your own pettiness, right? And that pettiness is actually what Mars is most known for, because it is a malefic. It's not a benefic. It's not a good thing. It's a bad thing. It's one of the bad forces of life. And it is how it is. It's just some of those things we have to accept. Yeah, but while he is the source of all these things, he's also the cessation of them. He controls when they end. He doesn't stop them from coming into being. He actively makes things violent, but he's also peace. He actively makes things peaceful. There's a method that we have, a secret way that we have of dealing with this, that I learned from the Orphic hymn to Mars. It actually tells you how to calm him the fuck down and get him out of your hair, and to calm him down, and not just in your spiritual life, but it applies to you personally as well. It's you get drunk and you get laid. It's ridiculous, but that's what it is. You get Dionysus and Venus, and when your passions are allayed, then you don't have, when you express that passionate, fiery temperament, once you've manifested that through the physical things that are under Mars, which is the gallbladder and the genitalia, once we express that, we're relieved. That anger is no longer there. We relax, and then we move on to getting calm and finding peace, right? So in the hymn, it gives you more information on that. So I'll talk about that in a little bit. So yeah, the qualities of the planet. The essence of the sphere of Mars is violence and force, right? And it's that violence of making things happen. It's the violence of goading things into being. Saturn is very still and steady and implacable. Mars is very active and goading, and it's prodding. Well, the weapon of Mars is the spear, and with the spear he prods things along. He goads things and right down the path. The lamed is the goad, if I remember right, in Hebrew, and that's the path of justice on the tree of life. It's that whip that you use to make things move forward. Excuse me, got something stuck here. Okay, so when you look at the original tree of life in Kabbalah, and this is in Agrippa's book 3, he talks a little bit more about this stuff. The Kabbalah and the Kabbalistic interpretation of the 10 spheres of manifestation and the chain of manifestation, it's based on the Sefer Yetzirot, and the Sefer Yetzirot, the long form, came into being right around the time that the Hebrews went to Babylon in the first place, and they were put under the Babylonian people. And if you remember the story of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, and Daniel, the prophet Daniel, prophesying for Nebuchadnezzar, all of that stuff happened under that first Babylonian exile. And as we see with Daniel, they were taught, all the young people were being taught this astrological emanation stuff, right? Daniel was an interpreter of dreams, but he was also the chief of the astrologers. His name was Belteshazzar, right? God save the king. And he was the chief of all the Chaldean oracles in the court, right? So that's what he was. He was absorbing this Persian mystical tradition of emanationism, and you could see it happening and impacting the Hebrew culture, right? So then when you get to the spiritual things that were going on, you can see that the people, the mystics of Judaism, adopted this and adapted it, and all of a sudden we have the expression of the Sefer Yetzirot. It takes everything through the Old Testament and actually goes back to Genesis, and it finds a way to express what was revealed in Genesis through this emanationist philosophy that aligns with Neoplatonism, that aligns with the Platonic ideal of the good. It aligns with all of these principles, right? And it's this root thing that that pretty much all mystical experiences are based around. That you eat mushrooms and you have a trip and you experience God. You understand that everything is part of this one consciousness. As the amygdala shuts down at various stages of various hallucinogens, or it can happen with like a past life experience. It can happen like with a near-death experience. It can happen with anything that like deep meditation, any kind of focused breathing can work on this. But what happens is your amygdala shuts down, and they've done studies where they've monitored the brains of both Carmelite nuns and Buddhist monks who are meditating and praying, and the same things are going on in their brains, no matter who they're praying to. What happens is the outer mind calms down, the prefrontal cortex gets calm, but when the amygdala shuts down, and this only happens in deep states of trance. When the amygdala shuts down, you start to feel this oneness with everything. And these hallucinogens that produce these experiences they impact the same parts of the brain. They reveal this connectivity that only the separation from one another is only there because our amygdala is working. And what does our amygdala do? It's the fear. It's our fight or flight place. It's the panic button in our brain, right? It's the part that is the root of our instinct. It's where everything comes into being. And that being the source of separation makes perfect sense. If you look at our chain of manifestation, the amygdala is sort of like the sphere of Saturn, right? It's sort of like the sphere of Mars. When something threatens the life of the person, the amygdala kicks Mars in the butt, and Mars releases all of the cortisol and all of the adrenaline, right? And we start to panic and we start to get afraid, or we get very angry and we start to fight. We have this fear or fight reflex that comes from the martial things, and it's all controlled by that part of the brain. And that's what keeps us separate from one another. Mars is the force of separation. It's the symbol. The metal is iron. The symbol is the spear or the sword. It's cutting. All cutting things are part of Mars in the material world. He rules over surgeons and barbers. He's the guy that's in charge of all that stuff. He's that force that is the cutting, the application of violence for healing or for harm. It's that thing, right? That is the essence of that. So when you look at this, back to the Sephir, yeah, sort of the emanation of Mars, of Gabora, that we call Gabora now. Gabora means strength, right? So you've got Keter as source, or whatever, the point and the head. What, I don't remember what Keter means, but then you've got like Hokmah is I think splendor, and then Bina is sorrow, and then uh Chesed is grace or glory or something like that. And then you get to Mars and it's Gabora, it's strength. But originally it was Pakad, it's fear, right? So it's both the source of fear and strength. And Pakad isn't just like fear. It's not like terror Phobos. It's not terror Deimos or fear Phobos. It's a different kind of sensation. It's more like the awe of standing in God's presence. And if you've ever done the Christian path to being in the presence of God, it's awe-inspiring. Like when Jehovah God enters the room in a worship service for Christians, it'll blow you away. It'll clear your head and make you realize that you aren't much, and you want to kneel down and worship this God, because that's what he is. He's awesome. He's great and he's righteous, but at the same time, it's kind of like, you're blown away. And that's what Pakad is. It's that sense of being blown away by the presence of this powerful God that you have to worship because he's just so powerful. That's Mars. That's that manifestation of holy terror, because you have to be righteous, right? It's the punisher of the unrighteous. Is this sphere, is this presence, right? And you know what it is. So what is the righteousness that this God enforces, right? When this God shows up, what is this righteousness of Mars in our lives? What's it going to look like? Is it really righteousness? When you look at the Old Testament, this God created everything. It's just from the paradigm of the Bible. Let's pretend it was real, or whatever. If you believe in that kind of thing, if you believe it, it's fine. Whatever. It's just, if you look at it, God created the world. He made us with the potential to do evil. He allowed evil to exist, gave us the option to do evil and the desire to do evil, and then told us not to do evil, right? He's like, he said, this part of existence is not allowed. This part of existence is allowed. I made these rules. If you break them, I'm going to punish you, right? And it's all it's his game. He's in it all, right? It's his thing. And he's the one that is making you do the things that you're supposed to do, right? And if you don't do it, he's going to punish you. And what's righteous is only righteous because he says so. It's not because it's intrinsically good. I mean, it's intrinsically healthy when you look at it. The things that he says are good are healthy for tribal society. But it's not really. It's just a set of arbitrary rules. It's his world. He could have made it differently. But what makes it right is because it has to be done. It has to be obeyed. It is might that makes it right, and that's what Mars is. It's the righteousness that comes from the force that can't be denied. If you look at police, they are the enforcers of the law. Here in the United States, the Supreme Court did a thing where, like, our cops supposed to be the ones that protect and serve us. And they said, no, they're not. They're not here to protect us. They're not here to serve us. They're here to enforce the law. And keeping that in mind is very important, because when you call on the police, they're there to enforce a law. A law is something that's been set up by the government, and the police are just there to enforce it. And whoever you elect for your people here is who makes the laws, supposedly. And then the police are just going to enforce those, right? So they're just acting on behalf of this higher law. But laws change, and what is good today is not going to be good tomorrow. If somebody else gets elected, a different law is going to have to be enforced, and these enforcers are going to have to enforce that, whether they believe it or not. That's what they do, right? They don't have principles that guide them. They have obedience to the law, and the laws change, so they have to change with it, right? So that's the problem. And when you look at, like, and Aries is the god of police officers and warriors and soldiers and everybody who has to do with applying violence for conformity and for order and structure to exist. That's what they do. They are the threat of violence. So that's what the essence of Mars is. And as we go through it, it's almost always applied in mean ways. So the things about the police that people don't like, I have a lot of friends who are into the all cops are bad movement. I disagree completely with that. I don't think all cops are bad. I think cops serve a very necessary function in our society. But the things that people don't like about the police are all the things about Mars and Aries in particular that people hate. He's a douche, and the things that we hate about the things about the bad police that we don't like are all the bad sides of martial forces. You know, it's being mean for meanness sake. It's being judgmental for things that are just judgy. You know, it's being an a-hole when you don't have to be an a-hole because you're here to enforce the rules, and you can decide whether you're going to enforce the rules or not. You're going to enforce some rules when you feel like it because you're an a-hole, right? And that's the things that people don't like about the cops, you know, but they get to do what they want, right? I mean, the Ares, when you look at him, he's the child of Zeus and Hera, right? He's like the king and queen of the fucking gods, is this entitled person who's in charge of implementing the rules, and he's the one that goes out and he's the enforcer, right? And he's mean about it, and he enjoys being mean for his power, and he doesn't have to pay the price because his dad and mom are in charge. That's how the police have been for years and years, right? They get away with things because they represent a necessary evil, right? So anyway, is it righteous? It's not righteous. It's not just. There is no justice in Mars. Okay, that's the thing. And the idea that, well, let me rephrase that. There is justice, but justice isn't good versus evil, right versus wrong. It's not what is healthy and beneficial to you. That's not what's justice. That justice is what the rules say. Did they get followed? That's what justice is about. Are the laws being enforced? And it's not even is it done equally. It's just, has the law been enforced in this case? Yes or no? We decide, and then the courts decide whether or not it should have been. It's all about basically not enforcing laws. When you think about justice, it's about whether or not the law gets enforced. It's not about right and wrong. It's just about this rule that people decided. So you got to keep that in mind. When you're working with the forces of Mars, you're not working with right and wrong. You're working with wrong, an application of evil, a necessary evil. So are you going to turn it on or off? Those are your choices when you're working with this as a magician. That's how we have to understand Mars is going to manifest, right? Because if once you get that, everything else kind of makes sense. So that's why I wanted to start with that. It's meanness, but meanness can be good, right? So that's basically where I want to go. All right, so now we're going to cover some of the stuff from the myths. I got a lot of stuff on this, so I do hope you're strapped in and ready for the ride. It shouldn't be too long, but I've got sticky stuff all over my hands. It is what it is. I'm sorry. Please forgive me. It is delicious, though. Okay. So we'll start with his parentage. So there's one myth where Zeus and Hera had Ares. He's the child. I think it's the Hesiod is where that comes from. And it's just standard. He's the son of Zeus laid with Hera, and they had Ares. When you get to Ovid, though, this Latin epic about the gods, it's completely different, right? So you see Hera is it's after Zeus has had Athena. Athena has burst into being out of his head because he swallowed Metis, and she became wisdom, right? So cunning magic became wisdom, burst out of his head. No Hera, no mother, just Zeus. Zeus had a baby all by himself. He could do both, right? Hera is jealous and pissed because if Zeus can do it, she can do it too. She's not mad that he had a child without her. She's mad that he had a power that she didn't have. She's jealous. She's mean, right? So she goes after, she's like wandering around the Elysian fields, and she finds Flora the nymph, and she's complaining to Flora about it. She's like, I can't believe this. Athena just came into being. Zeus is now mother and father. He doesn't need me. And where can I get this power? Why don't I get to do this? You know, I'm going to drain the oceans to find the power to do this if I have to. I will destroy this earth. I will tear it limb from limb until I have that power too. And Flora's like, oh, great. And Hera's like, wait a minute. So she says, by your look, I see that you might have some information that might help me. And she's like, okay, look, okay. So Flora the nymph is like this nymph that rules over all the plants. And she's like, well, I've heard of this herb that they use it on cattle, and if a cow can't give birth, uh, they feed it this herb, and then just touching it even will make them be able to give birth. So maybe that'll work for you. And sure enough, Hera grabs the herb, and as soon as she touches it, she gets pregnant with Ares, and Ares then is a child of spite. So like his whole existence is spitefulness, and this myth is something that captures what. And you got to remember that all of our myths that we have for these things are, I experience an aspect of existence, right? I'm a manifestation of the all thing. I'm a concentration of consciousness. I am Josh. I am Rufus. I am cut off from everything else. I am a separate entity, quote unquote, whose universal connection to everything has been forgotten, and I function as if I am separate, right? Um, uh, I don't remember where I was going with that, but but yeah. So anyway, his whole point of of all right. So anyway, so I remember now. We were, when we have an experience where we have something negative happen to us as this self that is separate from everything else, we have to kind of understand it, right? And we look inside and we see what is it in ourselves that are like that is similar to this, and we make up stories about it, and we express it onto this aspect of existence. And this aspect of existence is Mars. It's this aspect of fighting and violence. And what we've done to explain it and process it and get the symbols that we need to be able to work with it and address it is we project these myths onto it. And this myth of this child of spite, and all these myths of Ares being the enforcer of Hera's conniving, scheming, and jealous attempts to get for herself what she thinks Zeus owes her, um, which honestly he does according to the rules. He's the one that's always like breaking the rules and having babies with other people, and insulting her honor by having all these children with everybody else, and then favoring those children over his child with her. Those are the things that pisses her off. And when she gets pissed off, she always sends Ares after him, and Ares goes out and does all this stuff, and all the conflict that Ares causes is usually at the behest of Hera. And he's kind of a mama's boy. He's mother's best boy, but even he gets screwed by Hera. We'll get to that later. But yeah. So anyway, that's his parentage. He is the offspring of spite, and even if he's not the offspring of spite, even if he's both Hera and Zeus's child, he's not the favored son of Zeus. So he's a little resentful of his dad. His dad likes his half brothers that he has by other moms better than him, right? So I mean, Zeus is kind of a jerk to Hera and his child with Hera. So he kind of deserves it. But I mean, that's just, I don't know. I think that's what we're trying to fix with the world, is just not starting trouble. If you don't start trouble, there won't be trouble, in my opinion. But it's a process. So yeah. So he's the god of warriors. He's the god of warfare. He's the god of war itself. He's also the cop god. We went over that. He's mother's best boy. He's the god of horses. So this is a big deal. I was hearing the story. The person who invented horses, according to Greek myth, was actually inventing them to honor Artemis. He was in love with Artemis. He wanted Artemis to be his, and so he was trying to woo her, and so he invented the horse, because the horse is like the dominant, the apex herbivore. It's the apex animal. It goes around and it eats all the grass. If you introduce a horse to a place that doesn't have enough vegetation, it will drive out everything else and dominate it. It will destroy every other form of life that needs grass to eat, because it doesn't put up with that. They've got sharp hooves. They've been bred for violence. They are a violent species that eats everything. They are a consumptive force. The herds of wild stallions in Montana want to curb them because they are dangerous. They're not safe. But anyway, they're very much an Aries animal. They're very much a martial beast. His horses are so famous. They have golden bridles, and he uses them for everything, and he sends them to save people, his beloved. In the different myths, he sends them to save Aphrodite. Aphrodite gets struck down in a battle during the Trojan War, and she calls out to her lover, not her husband, her lover, right? Because Ares and Aphrodite had a thing going on for years before she ended up getting married to Hephaestus. They had 5 kids together, right? So Ares and Aphrodite were together. They weren't just like, they didn't get married. They weren't officially together, but they were together. Neither one of them wanted to get married, but they would get together and have sex and have kids and do God things. They were fine. And then anyway, we'll get to that. But his horses are famous, right? So they have names. So there's Ithon and Phlogios, red fire and flame, Konabos and Phobos, right? Tumult and fear. And also Ovis Terraque Paworke, fear and dread, the horses of Mars. So these horses are so famous that they actually get named. And when you do work with Mars and you want to actually call upon him, you can call upon him using these names of the horses. That's why I included it here. It's like, you, the master of Ithon, master of Phlogios, I call upon you. Send forth your steeds, Konabos and Phobos, to carry fear and punishment to my foes. That's how you work with these kind of names when you're doing your magic. And that's why it's important to note these things, right? Because anytime you see a servant of a god in a myth, you can use that name to work as like a familiar spirit, right? It's giving you an insight into the hierarchy of spirits and functions that are under that god. So that's why we list the names of all the spirits, all the horses, all the animals, all the entities that are a part of it. So here are the children of Ares. The children of Ares are not just gods and demigods. They are also animals and giants, oddly enough. Oh, wait a minute. I didn't go over some of the stuff. So I wanted to actually go over what his warrior roles were, because like a lot of my thoughts about Ares are tinged with this negative perception of him because it's all violence, right? And he is the lesser malefic, right? So of course he is evil, and I have a negative opinion of a lot of this stuff. But we got to remember that Ares, he was, I mean, one of his epithets is Theratos, the beastly one, right? And he is beastly. He is expressing this beastly force. But he was also a fighter. He was a warrior during the Titanomachy, right? When they were fighting the Titans, he was one of the warriors who fought for Zeus. According to the myths, he defeated Echidna's son, right, who was Kronos's answer to the thunderbolt. So like Kronos and Zeus are having this epic struggle, right? This 10-year war between the two of them to determine who's going to rule the universe. And Zeus is using the thunderbolt that was forged by Hephaestus under the guidance of the Cyclops, right? The Cyclops gave him the thunderbolt, but it was Hephaestus that was like arming him, right? He's the armorer. And then Ares was one of the soldiers that was fighting this war, and one of the ways that the thunderbolt, I mean, is basically unstoppable. When Zeus is fighting Typhon, he just fucking throws the thunderbolt at him, hits Typhon in the chest, and then he throws Mount Etna over him, and that's where Typhon is to this day, right? So when they were fighting against Kronos, the thunderbolt wasn't enough. So when you'd throw the thunderbolt, Kronos would send out Echidna's son, and it was a serpent. It was either a serpent-footed giant or a serpent itself. I can't remember exactly what it was, but this was Kronos's answer to the thunderbolt, and it would defeat the thunderbolt. It would absorb it, I guess, and not die. I don't know how it worked, but he couldn't use the thunderbolt because of this thing. So Ares went out and killed it. He's just like, screw it. Had this epic battle with it and defeated it. And that's what violence does, right? It destroys the things that stop you from getting ahead. That's how we use it as a magician. We use this force of Mars to clear our path and destroy the things that are stopping us from attaining our fate, right? Zeus had he had the fate to take over the kingship of Olympus, right? He had the backing of Gaia and Rhea. He had the support of his brothers, he had to do this thing, right? He had all that going for him, but there were obstacles in the way. Kronos didn't want to die. He didn't want to go down to hell and end up down there and buried by the hundred-handed. So he's fighting not to. So there's all these obstacles to overcome, and the violence needs to be applied to the things that stop you, and that's what Mars is. It's to get rid of the temporary obstructions that are in your way. When you are dealing with things of justice, people are like, oh, do a Mars spell for this legal right. Yeah, you really want to do a Mercury right, because you're trying to convince people not to apply justice, or to apply justice in your favor. And that's an argument, that's all that is. That's a Mercury thing. But for Mars, what you want to do is you want to apply the force to either enforce the law or not enforce that law. What's the violence going to do? Do you want the violence turned against you or turned off against you? Right. So that's your approach to this stuff. And even if it's like an idea that you're trying to manifest, like I'm trying to make a business, for example, I want my business to succeed. I've got my symbol of the business. I've taken it up through the spheres. I've conjured the intelligences. I get to Mars. What do I ask for? I ask for protection around it to guard this idea. I want my blessings of Jupiter to be focused into a willful, disciplined manifestation. But also I want that violence to be applied to anything that stands in its way. I want to cut a space for it. I want to destroy anything that is going to try to stop it and its tracks. I want to return any violence that's sent against it back to its source. Right? These are the things of Mars that we want to tap into, so that we can get that idea to manifest, because there is a violence in every creative act. It is something that we have to at least expect. Let's see. Yeah. So in that war, he was also all right. So he defeated the Echidna's son, right? This is a giant snake. He is known as the destroyer of the Titans. That was one of his epithets, or one of his titles. He had to fight a different, after that, when he was like, after they ruled Olympus for a while, Zeus was always getting like questioned, right? So in the same way that that Odin had to fight the giants in Norse mythology, Zeus had to keep fighting these giants. They besieged Olympus and were attacking things, right? And the gods were they were sitting there being besieged. Like, so Zeus was stuck inside. He was stuck, and the giants had it surrounded, and they couldn't do anything. So Ares gets mad, and he goes out and he challenges them to a duel, right? He's like, I'm going to fight you guys, right? So he goes down to attack them, and he gets captured. He loses, right? So Ares is not an undefeatable thing. He gets captured by these giants. They tie him up, put him in a bronze cauldron. Zeus is like, I didn't tell him to go out there. Let him suffer. It's Hera's son. What the hell? But I'm not dealing with this right now. So Zeus just let him rot. And Hermes is like, oh no. So Hermes sneaks out and frees him and gets him free. Hermes and Ares are friends. If you look on the pillar of severity, it's the greater malefic is Saturn. The lesser malefic is the mean, arrogant little Ares. And then under that, you got Hermes. You got Mercury down there. And Mercury is on the side of severity, because it's conducive, it's harmonic with that negative vibe, right? There's something negative about Mercury, and it's discerning. It's the lesser scalpel, but it's the scalpel that heals, but it's a tiny cut. It's the little sword. It's the discerning mind, the intellect. It's very much a minor aspect of or a further specialization of those powers that show up on that pillar. So anyway, in the myths, you'll see that Hermes and Ares are friends. They work together on a lot of things. They can, anyway, we'll get to that. So where were we? Yeah. So anyway, Hermes frees him from the cauldron, and then and those giants were let's see, the Alodi giants. Alodi. Anyway, Anyway, at another time, when Typhon first attacked the gods, all the gods ran to Egypt. So, like, instead of just holding up on Olympus, they all ran to Egypt. And the reason Typhon was able to defeat them was because Gaia was mad, because once again, she wasn't getting, she didn't like the way Zeus was ruling things. So she sent Typhon, and the same way that she sent Zeus against Kronos, she sent Typhon against Zeus and the gods. And they were like, oh shit. So they ran to Egypt, and they all turned into animals. And that's why the Egyptian gods have animal heads, supposedly. But the Ares god, and this is all symbolic of when Greece and Egypt sort of like got their stuff and all merged together. But when he went to Egypt, Ares became a fish, and the reason he became a fish is because Onurus is the Greek or the Egyptian god that is equivalent to Ares, and the fish was sacred to him. So let's see, what else did he do in a fight? I think that's it for the fights. But when we get back to the top god, if you've heard of Sisyphus, I'm sure you've heard of Sisyphus, the guy that's always pushing the stone up the hill in hell. The reason he was pushing that stone up the hill is because he was being punished. He was a criminal, right? Uh, Ares is the one that brought him to justice, but his crime was he told Hera about Zeus having an affair and having a child. So he revealed to Hera that there was, or I think it was Hera. It might not have been Hera, but he snitched basically. If Sisyphus hadn't snitched, he wouldn't have gotten in trouble. So Zeus, to punish him for snitching on him, sent Thanatos to kill him. Death. Snitches get stitches. Not this time. This snitch got murdered. But Sisyphus, because he was pretty slick dude. I mean, for someone to be able to snitch on the gods, you had to have a little bit of power, a little bit of authority. He actually captures Thanatos. And if you've read the Sandman series and you see how Sandman gets captured when they're trying to capture Death, this is basically Sisyphus. Sisyphus was capturing Death, who was sent against him. So it's that retelling of that age-old story. But that Sisyphus then was brought to justice by Ares. Ares went down and was like, nope, screw you, punched him. And sent him to hell, and now he's cursed to push that stone up. And so while Thanatos was captured, nobody died for a long time. So that's why that's why it was important, because the natural order had been disrupted. So there's Mars, Ares, enforcing natural order, right? Enforcing the passage of death, because death has to be a part of life, and so violence was necessary to ensure that continued to happen. Let's see. Yeah. All right. So, yeah. Are we there yet? Yes. Yes. Okay. So, that was the main things that I wanted to talk about there. I think I get into. Oh, I'm going to talk about Aphrodite real quick. So he actually let's see. All right. Children of Ares. So he had 5 children with Aphrodite. Okay, he's known for being this arrogant jackass, right? And this entitled young violent man, right? And he's actually a father. He's having these children, and he's taking good care of them. Phobos and Deimos, the 2 moons around the planet, are his children that he had with Aphrodite, his lover. Not just one child, 5 children, right? He had Anteros, the god of reciprocated love, right? Not just love, but love that's actually being brought to you, but also the god of unreciprocated love. So this is the person that if you love someone and they don't love you, you would go to them and be like, hey, can you turn this around for me? And then also, if you're looking for someone who just loves you, you go to this god and they help with that. So this is a child of Ares, right? So that's what Ares is. That's one aspect of what you get when Aphrodite is applied to Ares. When you conjure Venus to mitigate Ares, and this is the secret that we learn later, it changes it to something that is mutually beneficial. Reciprocation is involved when you mingle Venus and Ares together. You also get fear when you mix Ares. you get Deimos and so when you're in love, if you've ever gotten jealous of your partner, you feel this rage that's unlike anything else, and it's also fear. If you've ever been cheated on, you have an insecurity complex going forward and a trust issue with your partner, right? This fear that they're going to betray you again, right? Or not that they ever did, but that they might do what somebody else did to you. So love, that congress of sexual energy with a partner, exposes you to a kind of fear that's unlike anything else. And likewise, it exposes you to a terror, right? It's a fear of getting hurt again, but also the terror that you can apply to someone else, right? It's part of that whole that whole process, right, of falling in love. And this relationship between Aries and Aphrodite can really help you understand things if you have been hurt by a past partner, or if you have any kind of negative issues around sexuality, or negative issues around uh, identity. The whole aspect of the active expression of your sexuality is part of Aries and Aphrodite, right? And this fear and this terror are part of that, what you inflict to others and what has been uh, put onto you. These are things that you deal with through their offspring, right? So it's a very interesting aspect of this. Harmonia is an aspect, right? So in the same way that violence and procreation are manifestations of that same drive of Aries, it's not destructive in that way. It becomes life creating when love is applied to violence. It changes it into creative forces, right? Procreative forces. It can be healthy, and it produces harmonia. She's the goddess of harmony. She's a daughter of Aries and Aphrodite. Harmony, that it's not it, harmony is not two pitches on the same frequency. They're just complementary, right? It's that harmonious thing that makes things work together for good. Violence by itself doesn't solve anything, but love by itself doesn't solve anything either, right? When you mix them together, you get harmony. And the harmony that you get out of these two apparent uh, opposites, or things that you'd think would be opposed to one another, is not that. It's creative, it's harmonious, and it's about reciprocation. It's about reciprocated um, partnership, right? It's taking and giving. It's taking and giving for the sake of joy, right? It's like think of a positive sexual experience. It's two people coming together for a positive thing, where you're very active, and you're pushing against each other through the whole thing, but you're doing it in a way that is pleasant and causes something positive to come out of it. There's always like some people teach anyway. I don't know if it's necessarily true, but I enjoy the idea of it, that every sexual act creates a magical child. A spiritual event is created by the mingling of the energetic forces that are expressed during a sexual act. It creates like a little thunderclap that ripples outward and changes reality, right? And people try to focus that with all this stuff. But anyway, that's all aspects of Mars, right? And we got to understand that Mars is best expressed as a creative element when its forces are mingled with the sexual currents and the bacchanalian currents as well. You got to water it down with a little bit of hallucinogens and alcohol and things like that. It's something that softens your dendrites, or whatever it's called, the things that actually transport the neurons up and down your brain. When you expose them to psilocybin, for example, they get soft again, and you go back into a learning state, a more open learning state. Like children are in this learning state, and when you expose the brain to that, they react the same way as these children's brain cells would, or whatever. I don't know what kind of screwed up experimentation went into all that stuff, but basically it puts you into a state where you're more able to absorb information and learn. Alcohol can do that too in minor amounts, but too much is a poison, of course. And that's just how it goes with everything here. But it's that application of Dionysian elements that can transform that anger into other things. And if you look at Dionysus, it's wine, women, and song, right? Dionysus is orgia, like lots of sex and drunkenness. Drunkenness, of course, Dionysian. It's also theater. So if you're a theater geek, it's very much an expression of how your Aries gets sublimated and transmuted and expressed into something that is acting or entertaining, right? So war is very much an entertaining kind of thing to some kinds of people. It sucks, but it's just like why we watch football. Not we, but some people watch football. Why they get into sports and violent things is because watching violence is fun. It's the reason they watch the gladiators kill each other. It's because it's fun. It feeds that theater, that entertainment that has violence in it. An action movie. I watched a kung fu movie last night. It was dumb, but it was great. but anyway, theater is another way that you can get rid of that martial thing. So very, very cool stuff there, I think. Let's see. So by the way, Harmonia marries Cadmus. Cadmus is thirsty and he goes to drink out of the spring, and there's a snake there guarding it, and it's Ares' snake, and he kills the snake. And Ares, in revenge, turns his own daughter Harmonia and Cadmus into snakes to take the place of the guardian. So that's the kind of father he was. So in that myth, anyway, those who screw up short shrift even those who bring the harmony. But I don't that means that harmony is gone. But anyway, whatever. It's just the capriciousness of Aries. And that's the thing, you never really know what you're going to get with violent people. People who have a tendency to violence, you don't know which way they're going to go. They can go with creative, or they can go with destructive, and they're moody. They switch their moods in a heartbeat. People who have their Aries out of whack. And that's what these myths are expressing: the untrustworthy nature of someone who's dominated by Aries. People who have Mars and Aries, like, no, they're not going to be the kind of people that you want to. Unless they're doing like a lot of spiritual work, that they can be super active and everything, no matter what's in your chart. No matter how bad your chart is, you can express something positive with it. There's wisdom for all this stuff, and the whole great work is about trying to fix the things that aren't there. There's a whole approach to the great. It's sort of like the great work. It's where you look at your natal chart and you conjure the daemons of the angles of where your placements are at certain times based on how it is, and as you conjure them, you bind them and you stop them from whispering evil into your ear from that quadrant. And it's a Gnostic thing, and it's very weird, but it's all about trying to control your demons. Yeah, harnessing your demons and getting them to work for you. Anyway, that's what Mars is for. As a magician, we use that martial seal, the Mars seal, to coerce demons to do what they're supposed to do. The transformation of the self is performed through the violence of Mars. The heat, the fiery aspect of heat that is represented by the planet Mars, is what creates the transformation in the alembic of the alchemist. We're the great work. We're the prime materia, and we need that heat to transform us. And it's violent to us. It's a violent dissolution of ourselves. It's not violent, but like it could be dissolving. But that's still the process of being removed from ourselves, being cut up and separated, so that we can reform purely and get rid of the negative stuff. It's a process that we're doing intelligently. We're doing it by design so that we create something healthy, but it is applying that violent thing. So according to some, Nike, the goddess of victory, was the daughter of Ares. She's usually called the daughter of Pallas and Styx, but the idea that victory was related to violence is probably very appealing to some types of people, so you can understand why that myth shows up. The Spartans, the Spartoi, the sown ones, they actually are the descendants of people that were created by one of Ares's children, was a dragon, defeated by Jason. I think it was Jason. Was it Jason? Let's see. Yeah, sons of Ares. Yeah. So the warriors of Spartan were sown from the teeth of a dragon, and I can't remember if it was Jason that did it. I don't think it was Jason. I think it was another one. There was an earlier one, Cadmos of Thebes. I think Cadmos is the one that killed Ares' serpent and sowed the teeth and had the Spartans come. I don't remember for sure. It might have been Jason, but I'm pretty sure it was Cadmos. But anyway, it was the sowing of this dragon's teeth that created the Spartans. So they were considered the children of Ares as well, because he was like their grandfather, because the serpent was the offspring of Ares. And also the family of Polyphonte, the mother of giants, was descended from him. So also the giants that he ended up fighting were his own own thing as well. So the beasts of Ares, the Drakon that was killed by Harmonia, Harmonia's husband Cadmus, The Drakon Kolkikos, guardian of the Golden Fleece. So the Golden Fleece that Jason had to rescue was guarded by a dragon that Ares put there. Not Ares, yeah, sorry. The Golden Fleece that Jason had to get was guarded by a dragon that Ares had placed to guard it. He's the god of all the guardian dragons, are sort of. But Kolkikos was the name of that. If you ever needed a name for a spirit to either tighten that martial force, or to serve as a servitor, or to work as a, not servitor, a familiar type spirit, that is you can weave that into your lore, so you create that. The god of horses, any horse imagery can be used for that. Fire-breathing bulls raised on the plains of Ares, used by Jason to till the soil that he created the armed men from serpent teeth. So this one king had these bulls that he was raising out on these plains that were dedicated to Ares, and the bulls absorbed the power of Ares and started breathing fire. So these fire-breathing bulls were used to sow the ground that they planted the dragon seed in to raise the armed men from. The Amazons had dedicated a sanctuary of trees to Ares, and in response to that, and thanks for it, he gifted them with these birds that shot arrows. Right, so he had some of the defenses of the Amazons were these arrow shooting birds that he was the father of. He also gave the Amazons all of their great armor, just like it says in Wonder Woman. So let's see, the barn owl, the eagle owl, and the woodpecker are all his. Let's see, where is that? I think it comes later. I'll explain where that comes from. Pretty much all the serpents and the poisonous serpent in particular are all Ares entities. So when a poisonous serpent bites, I think it was Paul or one of the apostles in the book of Acts, it's basically an attack from Ares. And that's why it's even in the Bible, is because they were showing that Ares and the cult of Ares couldn't defeat Christ. It's like 2nd century horse shit that we're still seeing 1st century stuff, and it's just ridiculous when you start to see through the crap that is presented as all this stuff that is meaningful in the New Testament. When you see it through the eyes of an actual just like street magician of the 3rd century and 2nd century, you can see it's just smack talking gangs of occultists that are battling for attention and resources, right? That's all it is. It's trash talking competing mythos. It's ridiculous in the ways they get into it. Anyway, so the war god, he's the personification of battle, death, also peace. He's the personification of the end of war. He represents sacking and defending of cities. So one of his epithets you'll see later is about how you actually use his forces to he's called upon to sack cities, to destroy them, and also to defend them. And whoever's got the best relationship with Ares wins, and those kinds of things. He's the god of rebellion and civil order, so the god of police, but also the god of revolutionaries, right? So when you need a revolution, martial forces are your way to go. But if you're fighting an insurrection, martial forces are also the way to go. Brigands and banditry, he's about thieves. So one of his myths is that he just one day he got bored, so he went down and he just started shooting people from Olympus. He was just bored. He's just like, oh look, people, oh twang twang, and he's just killing these people. And so bandits and brigands are like, he's like us. So anyway, he's a god of them, and all violence and all rage. His blessings, though, so he's pretty cool when you get to it. If he's on your side, he can so Nisos had this he had a purple hair. Like I've got a white streak over here that you can see sometimes more than others because it's magical. I call it a glamour. But the king had this purple lock of hair, and it was the source of his power, just like Samson's long hair was the source of his power. I wonder why that's so similar. But anyway, this guy had a purple lock of hair, and it was his source of power. And his daughter betrayed him by cutting off his hair. And when he tried to chase after her and punish him, she jumped off a cliff, and so he couldn't get her. So Mars blessed him, transformed both of them into birds, a predator and a prey, allowing Nisos to exact his revenge on her forever. So that's the blessing of Mars is to you can torture someone forever. Tereus, a king in Thraca, whose wife and sister slew their infant son and fed him to the king. Right. So they tried to escape, and sympathetic gods turned them into birds. And Ares was so angry that they did that he turned the king into a hawk so that the hawk could chase after these other gods. So that's his blessing. Let's see. He gave Hippolyta the really great armor that Hercules had to go and get the belt of so that he could present that. He also gave him those arrow shooting birds. Diomedes was given a herd of man-eating mares. How great is that, dad-in-law? Give me a herd of man-eating mares. All right, so that's the kind of gift that he can give you, is like good familiars who are very angry. If you look at the myths of the Gorgons, I know Hecateans who work with Gorgons to protect themselves, and they have the Gorgons surround their area in the same way that I have the martial spirits around my area. Well, these mares that eat human flesh are sort of like that guardian spirit that you can set as your spiritual guardian. And if you don't believe that you need to have spiritual guardians, chances are you're probably in a place where you don't need to have spiritual guardians. But if you ever do need spiritual guardians, these are the symbols from the lore that you tap into when you're building your magical defenses. You conjure Ares to your presence. You conjure Camael, the archangel, and you ask him to intelligently focus these powers so that a form of protection, like unto the mares that ate flesh of Diomedes, given from Ares, let them protect me, and you just ask for these spirits to be assigned to do the same thing for you. So that's how you kind of weave these things from the lore into your magical acts. Aetes, a warlike king of whatever, let's see, he was rewarded with a dragon, like another guardian spirit to guard over you. So Ares is the bestower of guardian familiars. All right, so summarizing that, he's the spirit of violence, spite. He's entitled and arrogant. He's been wronged and is ready to punish those who do wrong in his eyes. So what happened with him and Hephaestus was bullshit, right? So Hephaestus got kicked out of Olympus because he was ugly, and he sent the gods a bunch of gifts. He became really smart and good at carving things and making cool stuff. And he was the one that created the thunderbolts, right? So he was like very, and the gods loved him because he made cool stuff. And Hera was the one that kicked him out. So he sent her a golden throne, and when she sat in it, she was caught in it. It trapped her. So it was like handcuffed her to this thing, and it was like a trick. And to get out of it, she agreed to have Aphrodite be married to him. And so she sold out Aphrodite. She was the goddess of marriage, so she got to do that, according to this myth. So she sold out Aphrodite and Ares, because she knew that Ares was dating Aphrodite, and Mother didn't approve. So Mother interfered with that. So anyway, she kind of screwed over her own son there. But that's why he knows he's been wronged, and that's kind of why he's such a dick about things. Even his boons are mean and cause harm. And the important thing to remember is if you're ever in a fight, like with people who are working with Mars, he can be defeated. All right. Who defeats him all the time? Heracles, Zeus, these giants caught him. Like, he's arrogant and he's prideful, right? And people who are very into Mars and their attempts to either attack or defend themselves are always going to be susceptible to this prideful, arrogant kind of thing that is open to you can always thwart an attack with the shield of Zeus, the Aegis, right? Because it's the big lightning shield. You don't have to worry about all that stuff, and you don't have to. And if you ever have to like attack people for whatever reason, Zeus is the way to go, because you don't have to worry about anybody with their martial stuff. So important to remember that kind of thing. You pick up all the little tidbits of all this stuff when you're paying attention. The magical applications of the forces of Mars, it can be mean-spirited and vexatious. You always have to be careful when you do it. If you're a good person, you'll find a good way to use it. If you're a bad person, you'll find a bad way to use it. It is a malefic. It will always make you be more mean I took a break the other day and I went on and ranted about Christians for about 40 minutes yesterday. I got to apologize for that because I actually said I hated them. And I'm like, I don't hate Christians, I don't hate people. I just hate some aspects of it that caused me harm at some points in my life. And it's like all that came out because I was like violently, vehemently Aries driven. And it's just like, sigh. So anyway, you gotta be prepared for that kind of thing. It's good for protection and reversal magic. That's what I primarily use it for. Never ask for justice, always ask for punishment, either the granting of punishment against people that you want to be punished, or the removing of punishment from yourself, right? And it doesn't matter if you deserve it or not. It's the punishment that you don't want. People who go to defend themselves from things that they know that they technically might have done, they plead not guilty, because if they can argue that that law shouldn't be applied to them, that the punishment not be applied, then they win, right? And if they win, they win. And it's the judge that decides. So they have to prove it, and they have to fight for it, and they have to find it, and they have to use their minds, right? But if they win, they win. So it's not about justice, it's about victory. So make sure you don't get confused on that. Don't go to Mars for justice, go to Mars for victory. And so yeah. Also, there's no love in him, right, except for Aphrodite, and that's not for marriage, it's for sex. And that's how you work it. That's how you work to harmonize. Yeah, I think I covered it better when we were talking about harmonia, so I'm not going to get too much into that. But to Kypris and to Bacchus, so Lielos, yield, right? That's what this is from the hymn. It says, to lovely Venus and to Bacchus yield, to Ceres give the weapons of the field, right? So that's at the very end of it, like after it talks about all the stuff that Mars is. The way you actually eliminate that is through sex, booze, and then all the weapons just sort of get put down in the field and forgotten about, right? So it's like turning swords into plowshares. And that way, once he's drunk and laid, it turns that violent act into a creative act. The fields are enriched, the soils are enriched. Ceres is Rhea is the fields that produce the bread that sustains society. Anyway, that's the way you turn that around. So let's see. When you're seeking to avert the punishments of yourselves or others, make your offerings to Venus to calm them, and then you ask Mars to go to Venus, right? So it's a two-part process. First, get in good with Venus to make sure you're up to date with your Friday morning devotional. You read her hymn, you offer a candle, you light a stick of incense, you just read the hymn as a statement of intent and say, blessings on you for all that you've done for me. I love you. Please continue to love me, right? Simple, easy, direct. Love your Aphrodite. That's all you have to do, right? And then you go to, and you can also say, and by the way, I'm going to be sending Aries your way. Please, remember that I'm here for you that way, because she wants to see Aries. You're doing her a favor. It's an offering to Venus by sending Aries to her. And then you go to Mars to thwart his powers and to transform a violent thing that's going on in your life, or something you're losing, or something you want to turn around. To turn that around, you have to apply this force of Venus to it. So you say, Mars, you say this Orphic hymn, and all you have to do is say it. It's right there. It's built into the technology. Go to Venus and to Bacchus yield. So you offer a shot of whiskey, like Fireball whiskey. He likes that shit. Offer him a shot of that, and you say, take this offering. You pour it out, and you say, go to Venus and to Bacchus yield. To Ceres give the weapons of the field. Right. And that he's like, okay. And then he goes to Venus, and Venus is like, here's Aries. So you get a blessing from Venus. She's ready for him, and she's ready to receive your offering of Aries. Aries is pleased, and he stops fighting against you. Right. And that harmony of Aries and Venus is then applied to your experience, right, to your benefit. So that's anyway, it's all right there in the thing. So I was going to put in all the powers of the pentacles of the Key of Solomon, and I did not. It's in the workbook, thank goodness. But I couldn't get the freaking thing to paste in there properly because I'm working on a Mac, and I'm not as good at it as I used to be. So I'm going to go through what's actually in the Word document here. Here they are. And it's in the PDF. Looks like I need to do more formatting. I apologize for the way that one manifested this week. It's entirely my own fault. Of course. So let me zoom in here a little bit. All right, so this is all from the esotericarchives.com. Everybody should go there and read all their stuff, because it's a source of almost everything good that I've learned about magic. I'm very grateful for Joseph Peterson and his works. So sorry for my scrolling here. All right, so the first spirit has the 4 spirits on it, right? And these are the 4 spirits that you can conjure as a magician to materialize the martial forces in your world. I only use these for defense. I only ask them to return people back to where they've come from. Actually, that's not true. I've worked with them for healing too. The second pinnacle of Mars, but these are the 4 spirits that you want to work with. I thought I had them in there, but I don't see them. But it's Gahuriel Isiel or Iphiel. I think it's Isiel. The F looks like an S. Barkeliel. I don't remember that one for some reason. Medimiel. All right, so when I conjure these guys, I always conjure Medimiel. So Medim is Mars, and Medimiel is the active principle of Mars. He's the angel Mars angel, right? So you call Mars angel, right? Mars angels, you and your 3 friends, Gafuriel, Ishael, and Barakiel, go forth and manifest these martial forces immediately. Thank you, and you receive this offering of fire and of smoke, and you give them cinnamon. Cinnamon is great for them, and tea light that you've got. Either dress it with abramelin oil, they like that stuff, and it's a simple, it's almost like hoodoo really, but it's always fire and smoke are your offerings to these guys. They love it, they eat it up, they go forth and they manifest things. And what do? They turn on or they turn off violence on your behalf, or they defend you, or they do healing, right? So if you go down here, if they're on the back of this pinnacle, they'll go forth and they will, with great success, defeat all kinds of disease if applied to the afflicted part. You put this one on your knee, and if you've got a sore knee during the barometric changes of the Pacific Northwest, your old injuries start to come back, and you can put this pinnacle on there and they go away, right? You can have, I'm not saying this, people I know who have had terminal illnesses have gone into remission while using normal medical treatment and seeing their doctor, and also applying these seals. That definitely doesn't hurt for even the worst case scenarios. I've heard stories of miraculous recoveries of people using this talisman. I don't know that I necessarily believe it, because I come from a faith healing background, and I know that, let me rephrase that. I do believe it. I 100% believe it, because I come from a faith healing background. I just believe that people are more capable of healing themselves than they give themselves credit for, and it doesn't always work. And the problem with faith healing is people say, if you don't have enough faith, it's your own fault that you're not getting healed. And sometimes you just don't get healed. There's Saturn in this world, right? Saturn is a force that you can't change some things. You just got to accept it. You can't make everybody be good. It's not, I haven't managed yet. I'm still working on it. I haven't given up. But you got to accept some things. But this is the way you change it, right? These are the things that you can change. You use this, right? So anyway, the third pinnacle of Mars. So I'm talking about like illnesses. So it's really good for like colds. I have not had success with warts. So anyway, we've got the third pinnacle of Mars. It is of great value for exciting war, wrath, and discord. This is your trouble starting thing. So if you're ever in a situation that needs some activity and the problem is entrenched management, for example, or things are not going to change, the status quo is, the inertia needs to be overcome, that's a time for rebellion. Rebellion needs to be done in the event of, and it's the answer to tyranny. Every tyranny is overthrown by a rebellion, and then they establish democracy, which leads to a bureaucracy, and then we have what we have today. And then one thing leads to another. But in an entrenched, inert stasis where everything is just going to hell because nothing's changing, revolution is necessary to change things. And you can apply these forces of Mars and controlled burns in ways that are healthy for society. You allow some rebellion, not the kind of ignorant crap we see in the streets today, but like the Occupy movement, for example, that got ignorant too, but in a different way. You can do things in healthy ways, but you go too far in one direction or another, it's bad. But anyway, this is the seal that you would use to start trouble if you needed to. The fourth pinnacle is about winning. It's just about winning. It just brings you victory and power in a war. So if you're losing, and you want to turn things around, make this, and you make these on a dawn or any other Mars hour on a Tuesday. It's that simple. You just make them in paper. You draw them in red ink because it's a Mars thing on clean paper. That's what the instructions say. You read the versicle around it. You conjure the archangel. Camael, thou archangel of Mars, come thou forth and appear before me. I've got your seal. I've got your name. I know your secrets. I call upon you. Bless this talisman. Enliven it. Let the spirits of the four spirits on the back, Medemiel and Ithiel and all the other two, you put all those together and you ask them to enliven this thing and you bless it at dawn. It takes 10 minutes, maybe 20. It's not hard to do this. You light a candle, you burn some incense, you offer it to the spirits gathered. You ask your holy guardian angel to appear and help them. It's all in the script in the conjure class. It's all part of it. You just build that together into a rite, and then you bless your thing, and it turns things around for you. I've done it. It's simple. It's a straightforward way to do simple magic. It's great. Fifth pinnacle is it's to get demons to do what you want. So people who are demonic, so in Seattle, I happen to know that there are people that work with demons, and there are stories in the demonic community that of exorcisms where they have to call on goetically the hierarchy of spirits to force an exorcism, and they've had incredibly ridiculous results, and it sounds like something out of a movie, and it's probably all psychosomatic and totally horse crap, but nevertheless it sure seemed like it was a possession, and then afterwards their lives got miraculously better or whatever. So I mean, it's like, I don't know, I don't judge, but if you're into that kind of thing, it's pretty cool. This is the talisman that you need to get those forces on your side. If you're the pinnacle magician that I am, it's a convenient way to do that. I don't do that, by the way. That's not for me. I love the idea of it though, and I would gladly participate. And I look forward to the opportunity. So like, if I do ever run into anybody possessed, I will totally see if my Zeus juju is good enough to deal with that kind of thing. I think I wouldn't have a problem. But we will see. So anyway, the sixth pinnacle of Mars, it hath so great virtue that being armed wherewith thou art attacked, you will not be wounded or hurt. So I sold talismans for a while, and when I sold talismans, I sold steel talismans of that to people in Mexico who had need of that kind of thing. I had multiple clients purchasing my talismans on the internet. That were shipped to various places in Mexico to keep people from getting injured and wounded. And I had people sending me emails thanking me for it and telling me about basically their kids got lucky. I had somebody, it was during Afghanistan, they sent it with their partners and they sent it with their children to Afghanistan, and they had stories of not getting hurt, that came back to them. And people who don't have talismans also have stories of not getting hurt. But the people who had the talismans, I didn't hear about anybody who it didn't help, or I never heard anything bad about it. So I definitely don't feel bad about that. I know that there are some people alive who attribute their lives to this, and I carry one myself. So it's just how it is. It's worth having. Hail and tempest, I don't do that kind of thing. There's another one for earthquakes that I don't do. I have a long, strong urge to do that kind of thing. But that's not what I do. It's just fun to think about. So there we go. Let me get this out of the way. All right, so back to the presentation. Thank you for your patience. We're almost we're moving right along. We're more than halfway done. All right, so what to expect when you start to do the magical things, the sorceress side of things. When you start working on, you can expect the violence to work. You know, you can expect it to be better. Things calm down, sources of trouble that you are unaware of get taken care of, and you don't have to deal with them anymore, and it's great. Things just get better. That's literally what has happened to me. Like I will have a series of bad events, and I will simply reach out to Mars and say, whatever's going on, fix it. And things just get better. I don't know who was doing what. I don't know what part of me needed the violence addressed to it. I don't have to be consciously aware of it if I am consciously aware of the forces that I work with that manage that kind of thing. This is the power of our magic, is we don't have to be smart enough, good enough, popular enough to make it work for us. We don't have to have that level of perfection to be able to enjoy the best parts of life. We just have to know the people who do, right? And the more we hang out with them, the better quality people we become, in my opinion. I feel like I'm a pretty decent person. I'm happy, and I encourage other people to be happy. I think that's what life is all about. But I mean, this stuff, there's no guarantee it's going to make you a good person for sure. But when you work with Mars in a way that's trying to make your life better, it makes your life better. I do know people who work with Mars to cause trouble, and if you cause trouble in your life, you have a troubled life. If you cause trouble for other people in your life, it's in your life. You're causing trouble for your life. You want to watch somebody suffer, you're participating in suffering. You're bringing that negative vibe into your own sphere. It sucks. You know, I don't want to be around people who do that. I don't like it. That's there's times and a place. Don't get me wrong. I do negative or magic, or I've been a part of it for proper applications to remove negative people from the situation, so that they're not causing harm anymore. That, you know, it's effective to do that kind of thing. It's not like necessarily going to hurt them or anything. It just makes the dangerous things turn off. You know, it appeals to the peaceful side of Mars. You can do this kind of thing in a healthy way, is what I'm trying to say. You don't have to be, but anyway, it's great. You can turn these forces in your benefit without being a jackass. When you're doing this, people stop working against your efforts. They just, people who are obstinate and recalcitrant, stuck in their ways. If you work in IT, if you ever work in change management, Aries is very good at getting people to go along with you, because, and if you do it right, it can keep it from being forced to do things, but getting people to accept that they have to do things, not because they want to, but because they have to, and they're okay with it because it's probably going to help, you know. And that's where you use the bull to goad them into, right? You also find that your friends leap to your defense. That's really nice. I have not had that happen. Like, I have great friends, and it's just all the times I've gotten in trouble in my life, it's because I deserved it. And so I've never had like an opportunity, like my friends are all decent enough that they knew I was screwing up, and they weren't going to like defend me for being a screw up. And I get it. And I wouldn't expect them to defend me. Like, they stood by me and supported me, but they didn't like defend me publicly or anything when I was screwing up. They knew they'd let me suffer the consequences. But that's fair. But when I turned myself around, started being nice about things, my friends that were good people started defending me. Like they don't just sit on the sidelines. They come forward, and I didn't expect it. You know, I'm used to just like dealing with things on my own. And all of a sudden I had people like publicly stepping in and saying, hey, no, this isn't cool what you're saying about him. And I was like, wow, you know, it's nice to be recognized and defended by the people that supported me, and even at my worst, you know, giving them an opportunity to be like proud of me. I feel like I'm doing pretty good. Anyway, that's all Aries, right? That's Aries at work by disciplining my own negativity and my own tendencies to screw things up, by controlling that. and dominating it, right? By taking dominion over my own negative impulses and the expression of them. And I'm not great at it. I still screw up, but I mean, by not letting it get completely out of hand, and by having established firm boundaries around that in my life that I keep in place with discipline, not because I want to, but because I have to. It's like not drinking. I don't drink because I don't drink. It's because that's why, and that's the kind of thing that I have to keep on top of to stay making progress, moving forward. And that's the application of Aries in my day-to-day life, in my existence, and it's necessary to keep that there, but also not letting it turn into something that is judgy. Anyway, these are all tangents. I'm sorry. The devotional path. So when you start doing these transformations I was just talking about, like controlling yourself, like all those things I was just talking about are what you can expect. And the way you do this kind of thing, I'm just going to recommend doing a conjuration of the archangel and reading through the hymn. Just start with that. It's a simple way of getting in touch with these energies and asking them for initiation. And it starts to put aside a lot of the pain. And don't forget to light a candle and a stick of incense to Venus and just tell her you love her. And then don't say anything else. Just leave it at that, and then go and do your Mars initiation, and let those forces sort of flow through your sphere and get things sorted. You'll feel things start to come up. It's not a lot of fun. It's not a lot of well, it can be a lot of fun if you let it just stop being bad, and that's what I tried to focus on. It's going to be as hard to deal with as you let it be. The way I've worked with it personally was in protecting my boundaries, reversing attacks, healing diseases, and anger management. Those are the things that I wanted to touch on as effective in your devotional path. So let's talk a little bit about how it looks in the material world. In the material world, in the human, in the body, it is let's see, it's over the blood and the gallbladder and the veins, the kidney, the buttocks, the back, the motion of the sperm, and the irascible power. So let's talk about the irascible power. In the material world, we're going to see the urge to fuck around and find out. That's the irascibility of Mars. That urge to cause trouble, to troll people on the internet, to demonstrate that you're better than them, to one-up someone, to be an a-hole when you don't have to be, right? When you can be kind and get something that you want, but you can also be mean and get the same thing and kind of have fun at their expense a little bit. That's Mars. That's you being Marshall, okay? That's the irascible power. You're a rascal, you little rascal, and that little rascal inside of you is what's always what we're trying to fight against in our day-to-day life. The more we let that out, the more the worse our lives are. It's giving vent to that negative, that lesser malefic. You're letting a little bit of evil out every time you do that, and you're making your world more evil. Right. So that irascible trait is something we have to keep our eyes on. Things that are under Mars are good for the head and your testicles. So also your generative organs, all the generative organs, testicles or not. It's all about what you create. And you got to remember that these guys that wrote this didn't know. They thought that that maggots formed from rotting meat. Like they didn't know that eggs even existed. Right. So they don't know what they're talking about, but what we're looking at here aren't the words and aren't what they thought. It's what they represented at the time, right? So all the things like the motion of the sperm that they thought that represented, like they could see it through a microscope. They didn't really know what it was doing. They just knew it was moving. I don't know if they had microscopes. I don't know exactly how they knew, but anyway, they knew it was moving. So it's like they probably meant something different by sperm. I think they meant seeds. Anyway, yeah, it's not what they say. You got to look for the meaning. So by testicles, they're talking about the source of the generative powers in our lives. It doesn't have to be balls in humans. I mean, it is the balls in humans, but it's also your generative organs in women. But spiritually, we're talking about something else. It's your right nostril. It is the boldness, contention, and anger in your inner emotions, your inner sense of hearing. Hearing is of Mars. It's so it's interesting because hearing then becomes violence, right? So how is what you hear violent? How is that cutting? How is that cutting? So it's not hearing, it's listening. What does it represent, right? So the power of Mars in our inner sense is what we're letting ourselves hear from other people. Like, what are we letting in and what are we rejecting? That's what the power of Mars is. And when we work with Mars, we gain the conscious control to be able to hear what other people are saying and also to hear what we're speaking about them, right? We can hear ourselves and we can hear them. So that's what the inner voice, the inner hearing is all about. It's about being able to hear yourself and discern how you're hearing others, right? So it's a very important power. And that's another aspect of the whole initiation thing that we go through. Amongst taste, it's all the bitter tastes, tart tastes, and burning things. So all the Sour Patch Kids. In the spirit, it's the irascible, like I said, that's that rascally part of yourself. Your divine gifts, let's see, right, it was the basically all the opposite things of Mars, like all the positive things like courage, the ability not to be frightened, um uh vehement, inconvertible vehemence of the mind, so like positive aspects of your stubbornness. So the negative aspect of that would be, of course, being stubborn and calcitrant, but being positive about it would be like not being stubborn and being quick to change your mind to things. That's a martial trait. Applying that fire to the mind is part of that. Let's see, the corruption of the human soul is covetousness, and evil occasions to get wealth and tyranny. So the more you work with Mars, the more chances that you're going to have to be a tyrant, to get ahead by evil ways, to get ahead by harming other people, right? And the stronger you get to resist those kind of things, like I'm walking this dog, and this dog has very little impulse control because he's young and he's strong, and he wants to chase cars. You know, it takes time of sitting and learning impulse control, and the longer he sits, the better he is at standing when a car goes by, right? And that's what the application of Mars is, right? It's impulse control, and it's a learned behavior. Let's see. Anyway, let's see. Mars rules over barbers, physicians, anything that cuts, executioners, butchers, anything that makes fires, bakers, uh, soldiers, and anybody that's called a martial person, the police, anybody that uses force as part of their lives, to encourage their jobs or whatever. A sour person, fierce and cruel, angry, rough countenance and gesture are ascribed to Mars. Mars makes a big man of red hair, round face, yellow eyes because they're drunk, uh, of terrible and sharp looks, bold, fat, proud, crafty. So like Boss Hog, if you're interested in the American, uh, what's it called? Dukes of Hazzard from back in the 1980s. Terrible TV show. Anyway, in the physical world, Mars shows up across in the things in various ways. So I wanted to go over the tables. We can go through the tables if you want. Let's see. There we go. So the virtue of the planet is the heat of fire under Mars. It's the scale of the number 4 is Michael, the lion, Seraph, fire, heat, summer, and the east. That's a summary of all the things that are important. So Michael, the archangel of the sun, the lion is also in the scale of the number 4 in the same column as Mars. The elemental, I think it's not. I think the choirs. I can't get them confused. They're like the choir, and then the can't remember what the other one's called, but there's like the seraphim are over fire, and they're like the spirits, the serve under Michael when Michael is the Lord of the Prince of, or sorry, the Lord of Fire. So if you look at the archangels, and it's Michael and Uriel and Raphael and Gabriel are the four archangels of the elements in the four corners of the world. They each have servants, and their servants are all parts of these the choirs of angels that are called the seraph. So the seraph are all belonging to the element of fire. So like in the same way that salamanders are the elemental spirits that serve under I want to say a Maimon. Yeah, pretty sure it's a Maimon. Yeah, a Maimon. No, Orions, under Orions, right? Salamanders are under Orions. Sorry. So yeah, so salamanders serve under Orions in the same way that the seraphs serve under Michael. And that's because the people who work with angels have to have the same thing as the people who work with demons, and the people who work with demons have to have the same thing as the people who work with angels. Otherwise, it's not fair. So whatever. But anyway, if you want that, Michael is the archangel, and seraph are the angels. And also, if you want to just work with Camael, that works too. He's with the, or Samael. So another thing is a Camael versus Samael. If you look at, it's probably the archangel of Mars, according to ancient Hebrew tradition, should be Samael, which means the poisoner of God. So again, that's that application of violence that's according to God's will. But it's just sort of, you gotta take it. It's whether you like it or not. God's will says you're going to be poisoned or you're not going to be poisoned, according to that interpretation of it. And that Samael is the intelligence that applies that poison of God, right? That's either there to kill or to heal or to harm or to relieve those things, right? To take them away. So that's what Samael is supposed to be. And then in the 16th century, a bunch of lovely Europeans wrote everything down poorly, and they couldn't read what they were writing. A lot of them claimed to be illiterate when they got caught with the books, and they were like, "Oh no, I was just copying it. I don't know what it said. I don't do magic. Don't burn me at the stake." Literally, that was their defense. Was one lady says, "I'm a woman. Women can't read. It's illegal to read. So how could I possibly know magic? I just happen to be copying these books of magic." So she got away with it. But that's how this stuff works, right? It's copied over. And when they went from Samael, they ended up writing a calf instead of a Samek, right? So the calf became Camael, and the Samek got lost. So Kamael and Samael are the same thing, and that's all I think. I'm pretty sure that's my interpretation of things. But if you look at the letters, it makes sense. It's got plausibility, if nothing else. So anyway, Camael and Samael, they mean the same thing. In my experience, it doesn't matter if you believe it. If you believe it, it seems to influence it. And I believe that Camael and Samael can be interchanged. And oddly enough, I interchange them, and they work fine. I've worn the Laman for Samael and called on Camael. I've got a iron talisman that I work with my box on that has Camael on it, and then I still call on Samael, right? It just depends on the mood I'm in. I feel like Camael's a little less intense, and it's just sort of, it's entirely my interpretation. I'm projecting that onto this entity, but whatever, I don't really care. It's for fun as much as it is for everything else, you know. So anyway, that's that on the angel conjuring stuff. Let's see. So the virtue of the planet is the heat of fire. So like fire has one aspect that belongs to different parts of, like the expansiveness of flame is under Jupiter, but the heat of fire is under Mars. Let's see. The element is fire. All things that are fiery. He's iron and brass and any other fiery red or sulfurous things. Diamond, lodestone, bloodstone, jasper, anything that's of multiple kinds, and amethyst of all things. I didn't know amethyst was part of his cadre, but apparently stones get their hardness from Mars. So diamond, it gets its hardness from Mars, and so does lead, right? I mean, not lead, but I guess, I don't know, is lead even a stone, or metal stones? I guess not. Yeah. And then here's more different stones that belong to them. Plants, so many plants. This is only interesting if you're into herbs and spellcraft like that. I'm not so much, so I don't really pay much attention to that. But my wife is very into that, and I can rely on her for that. And If you don't have a wife, you have ChatGPT, which can get you pretty close to it. There are the Magician's Tables by Skinner. He has, I think he has modernized versions of all these herbs in it. Very useful resource. You can Google these words like what is this in a modern, what plant was it referring to in the Middle Ages when they called it this? Bing is very good at answering those kind of questions. But you know, you can usually figure out most of it, like onions and leeks. I don't know, thorny trees. Anyway, you can figure out which ones are martial there if you look. You look it up. But again, I don't work with herbs very often. Other people are into that more than I am. I just like to do simple conjuration. I use really basic incenses and candles, and I'm really there for the spirit conjuration more than I am everything else. So I kind of skip ahead to that. So different strokes for different folks. Wood, all wood comes from Mars. Lions, let's see, any kind of warlike animals, goats, kids, of course, goats, because Aries is a sign of the goat. Wolves, leopards, wild ass. Yeah, I've known a lot of wild asses, and they definitely are under Aries. Let's see, all the birds that are violent about things, anything that devours flesh and breaks bones. Fish the same way, the pike and the fork fish. Anything that gets its horns like a ram, anything that looks like the other Aries types of animals. The places, all privileged places, consistories of noblemen, tribunals, chairs, places for exercises, schools, and all beautiful and clean places scattered or sprinkled with diverse odors. Whatever, like basically it's these days it would be City Hall is basically it, in federal buildings. Those are appropriate to the planet, and any of those fake parks that they have out in public, like the monument areas in Washington D.C., all that crap is absolutely under Mars. And airports, anything that has armed guards standing around it, anything with armed guards standing around it is a martial place. It's pretty safe to bet. Sounds. I don't know why that has the bake houses and places of execution. Oh, sorry, that should be places that are appropriate to the. This is more places. So there weren't very many sounds about it. I didn't really get too much into that. But yeah, anything that has fire in it, bake houses, places of execution, murder houses, anywhere there was a great battle is a great place to get martial dirt. If you're doing, like I'm doing some spirit pots for people that involve Mars, and I'm going to be gathering some battleground dirt from places where battles were fought here in the state of Washington long ago. The nice thing about humans is that no matter where you live, so battles were fought there either over the weekend or whatever. Don't worry, Joey, I won't. Actually, you know, I've got a funny story about that. And never mind, I'll tell you later. So anyway, let's see, colors, anything red and burning, fiery, violet, purple, and bloody and iron colors are also of Mars, according to Agrippa. Any red stars in the sky would be martial. When you go to conjure these spirits of Mars, let me get this out of the way. All right. The incense from Mars should be anything as odoriferous, like sandalwood, cypress, or lignum aloes. Palo Alto, what's it? San Palo wood is good for that. Let's see, phrases for your intent. You could call on them as Mavors, powerful in war, Mars, powerful in war, Mars, bloody, powerful in arms, Mars, a sword bearer, Mars, magnanimous, etc., all that stuff. Whoops. Yes. All right. Epithets of Aries. Again, I didn't have time to paste that in, but here we go. All right. Epithets of Aries. We've got Theratos, the beastly brutish one, Hippios, Aphnelos, Gynecothonios. So Gynecothoinos, whatever. This spirit feasted by women. So there's this city that was being attacked, and the women went out and defended it while the men stayed inside the city. And the women, they like snuck out in the middle of the night while the men were asleep, and they just like murdered or beat the crap out of or completely destroyed the enemy without any help from the men. And then they went back into the city and they celebrated, right? And they were like, yeah, we kicked ass. And they feasted Ares for it. And they refused to feast with the men. And they would not allow the men at the feast. They celebrated their victory without him. And they honored Ares with no men allowed at these feasted by women. So ladies, people who identify as women, if you are in a place where you need to establish that, gynecathoinos is there for you, right? So Ares gynecathones is there for you. Anyway, hilarious. I love trying to say this word. Whatever. Bloodstained and bloody. If you need something bloody, or need to stop something bloody. I thought I had all this fixed. For some reason, I didn't paste it back in there. Anyway, I'll have to fix all that and send that out in the fixed version. Apologize for that. But any of these things that you need, any aspects of reality that you need to be influenced in an active way that ascribe to these, you put your statement of intent together and say, spirits of Mars, apply thy forces as you do under the name Ares Enialos, the warlike one, Ares Chrysopolyx of the golden helm, protect my head and shoulders, or whatever. Protect my thoughts and ideas, protect myself from intrusive thoughts. Those types of things can be applied from that. The hymn of the sphere. So there's two hymns for Mars. There's the Homeric hymn that there's the Orphic hymn that you're familiar with down here, or I'm familiar with. It's there in the book, but then there's a Homeric hymn that's very interesting as well. But here you can see a lot of the other epithets that we just went over or that I briefly went over there above: strength, chariot rider, golden helm, doughty in heart, shield bearer, savior of cities, harnessed in bronze. All of these things can be used as a epithet when you're trying to tap into the forces of Mars to protect yourself or to attack other people around you, for those people who are mean spirits among us. Let's see. The Orphic hymn is a very good initiatory rite. On the muses, there's a table in here of who the muses are for each of these people. Where is it? I can't find it now, of course. Oh, here we go. All right. For Mars, it was Basarius and Clio. So Clio is the muse of Mars. She's going to be the active force. She's also responsible for fame and fortune. If you want fame, you want to live forever, Clio is your girl to go to. Clio's consort is Basarius. Basarius would be the more mental aspect of this particular force of fame and cutting edgery that she represents, the martial aspects of the muse. If you're looking to be inspired in martial arts, for example, that's a great place to tap into that, I guess. Whatever. So you've got your muses, but Basarius would be the Bacchus of that particular tradition. Let's see. Spirits are ceremonialists. The god name is Elohim Gabor. The choirs of spirits are the powers. The archangel is Kamael or Samael. You can also use Medimiel is a very useful. The four spirits names are Medimiel, Bartzakia, Eskiel, and Thuria. So those are the four names of the spirits of the elemental sides. The seal of the terrestrial spirits it's in the workbook. There we go. This guy right here. So these seals actually are code. If you ever want to get into that, these are called staves that go across here, and then the symbols up here, you can find similar symbols representing different things in Agrippa and in other manuscripts. I think I want to say Clavernus and Inferni, Claviculus and Ferni. I'm not sure. That might have them, but there's like heads that mean different aspects of things like geomantic figures or aspects of planetary influences on things. So like these can be representative of the daemons of the quadrants of your natal chart, for example, or something like that, or the quadrants of a certain aspects in the planetary sky. Like if you understand all that stuff, in theory, you'd be able to get into it. I don't understand all that stuff, so I'm not going to get into it. So that's that particular seal. And then we've got the tables of the planets for Mars. The god name is Adonai. The intelligence is Graphiel, and the spirit is Hishmael. Here's the magic number square that adds up to the same numbers backwards, forwards, and sideways. This is all directly out of the version that's online at esotericarchives.com. There's another version of Agrippa's 3 Books of Occult Philosophy that is Donald Tyson's translation that I use. I've got it right here by the computer. But that has like a lot of great notes on this stuff that I highly recommend. You should definitely read that stuff. And I'm getting Eric Perdue's version shortly. It's on sale right now. If you guys are into Amazon buying things, Amazon has Eric Perdue's latest. It's the latest and greatest translation of the 3 Books of Occult Philosophy that we have available. I'm not sure which manuscripts he particularly used in that translation, but from what I understand, he went back to the source material. And I've been watching him for years online, and he's brilliant. I mean, there's no arguing with the fact that he's got one of the best minds I've in the occult spheres of influence that has a voice. He's really smart at what he does. So I'm looking forward to getting my hands on the book and seeing what he has to say about this in particular. I've got my theories about what these chapters represent, but they're not really developed enough to discuss in public. Images of the astrological seals. For Mars, they made at a special time, they put the form of a man riding on a lion, having in his right hand a naked sword, carrying in his left hand the head of a man. They report that an image of this kind rendereth a man powerful and good, so that he'll be feared of all. So a man on a lion holding a sword and a head in his other hand. That represents Mars. And the other one, to get boldness and fortune, was the form of a soldier armed and crowned, girt with a sword, carrying in his right hand a lance, and this made an hour of Mars. So a man with a sword or a lance, or girt with a sword and holding a lance. So that's what I got for today. If you guys have any questions, do please feel free to post them in the chat room, or you can hop on the microphone, unmute yourselves, and ask me directly. But that's what I've got for our actual presentation. I'm going to get this printed up. I need to put the tables in it. I'm not sure if I'm going to do that because they are in the document, but I do need to finish getting some of this stuff cleaned up a little bit and redistributed here shortly. Sorry again for the late delivery on that. I really thought I had more time to do all this stuff, and I didn't think it was going to take as long as it did. I had my tables all prepared ahead of time, and then when I went to turn the tables into text, it did not go nearly as smoothly as I had expected it to. And I was right up until the last minute and a little over working on getting this going. So anyway, that's what I have to say about Aries. I hope you guys did have a good time. I'm not seeing any questions popping up. CP, thank you very much. I will be available if you have any questions. Do shoot me messages on Facebook, on Facebook Messenger, or you can send me emails at rufusopus@rufusopus.com. How would you use Mars to protect yourself or diffuse those who are martial people? Go directly to Venus, and like I said, ask her for favor and thank her, and just tell her you love her. Express your gratitude with her with like a nice smelling incense and like a little bouquet of flowers. If you have a statue of her, it's great. You just put the flowers in front of it, and you light a candle and a dedicated candle holder, and you light a stick of incense. I like Nag Champa. It's super easy. She likes that. It smells good. But you don't have to use that. You can use like a lavender. You don't even have to use that if you use fresh flowers that smell pretty. Anything that has a scent to it, you offer that to Venus, and you just tell her you love her very much, and to receive Aries as an offering of love and blessing, and to continue to bless you with pure love, and to protect your heart, right? Just simple prayers. Like you get in good with Venus on a Friday, And then when you're good with Venus on a Friday, you move into on the Tuesday, the following Tuesday, at dawn or in a martial hour, you conjure the you can do this Elohim Gabor, requires you can be like you open up your temple space or however you do that. I have my recommendation in the conjuration class. You get your space set up according to your cosmology. You call on this the god of the sphere, right? It could be this Elohim Gabor, and the choirs could be let's see, for here we have Amael, here's a seal. The powers are the choir of angels. Here's the name of God written out in Hebrew letters in the what's it called, the celestial script. So here's Elohim Gabor, God of the sphere. Camael, the archangel of the sphere, I call upon you by your name and your seal. In this hour, I call upon you, thou intelligence of the sphere of Mars. I call upon you who rules over the choir of angels of the powers. I call upon you in the name of Elohim Gabor. Come forth now, Camael, and hear my call. Be present and represent the sphere and the powers that you represent. Be here now. Bring also with you the spirits Medimiel, Bartzakia, Eskiel, and Ithuriel. I call upon them by their names and their seals and their agreement to appear before me. Come forth, right? And then you say the Orphic hymn to you say to the spirits gathered, you say, hear me now, and let this be my intent. Right? Where is it? So you go to the Orphic hymn, and you use the Orphic hymn as your statement of intent. Where is it? Well, I think it's in a slide. I'll just go back to the slide. But when you say the Orphic hymn, it's got this phrase in it. Here, when you get to the end, stay furious contests and avenging strife, whose works with woe embitter human life. To lovely Kypris, Aphrodite, to lovely Kypris and to Laius yield, and arms exchange the labors of the field. Encourage peace to gentle works inclined, give abundance with benignant mind. Right. So you say, go to Aphrodite and go to Dionysos, and you offer the shot of with firewater whiskey, right, and a little tea light candle and a stick of incense that smells like cinnamon, or a fiery spicy thing like dragon's blood if you have dragon's blood incense, or a peppery kind of thing if you're into that kind of self-abuse. I had a Cunningham book when I was a kid, and it said to use black pepper as your Saturn and your Mars incense, and I did, like a fool. Don't ever burn black pepper if you're not into that kind of thing. I had a friend make black pepper incense sticks. He is like, I'm so proud of myself. And then like a month later, he used one, and he's like, had to open all the windows and doors in the house. We had burning capsaicin, burning our eyeballs out. Anyway, terrible advice. So yeah, so don't do that. But anything spicy is a good incense. You don't have to do all those terrible things. So anyway, you wrap that up, and you ask Aries at the end of it to go to Venus, and you've prepared Venus on Friday to receive Aries, and that will thwart that power in your life. So that turns that terrible thing into something harmonious, right? And that gets rid of that negative person in your life, right? And then you hit him with just like, bam, Saturn and Aries, and just like nail them down and get them the fuck out of your life and exit the situation, and you're free and clear. You don't have to worry about any of that crap anymore. You just you diffuse the situation, and then you leave the situation, right? So that way you're not like, because like the first thing, like if you think about like if you're in a like if you get assaulted, like if you're walking down the street and someone comes up and punches you, from the moment that you're in that situation, you're in that violent interaction with somebody, you have to deal with it, right? And your choices from that second forward are what get you through that situation to something where you have different experiences that aren't terrible. Right? So you have to choose in that moment what to do, and the first thing you have to do is stop that pain. Right? You have to evade the situation, get out of the place where you're getting assaulted, so you escape. Right? You stop that fight. And if you're in a situation where you can't just walk away without causing more harm than, because it's so bad, like you can, people slip and slide down into the worst places in existence, and they live there, and they're like, oh, this sucks so bad and I don't know what to do, and they don't know what to do, because it's getting out of it is harder than putting up with it. Right? But it's still terrible. So eventually enough is enough. Right? So how do you get out of it? You do this Venus and Mars right together. Right? You prepare Venus to receive that negativity that would come when you try to leave, and you eliminate that. So like if the hurdle is this crippling debt, the debt goes away. Right? Like, so if debt is what's being held over your head and to keep you in this bad situation, the debt goes away. And then in that free situation, you're no longer obliged to be in that situation. You do this Mars and Venus, right? And if it's like child custody situations that are holding you in a place of not being able to advance your career, for example, like people were like, they can't make more money because their spouse would no longer support their children, and they wouldn't make enough to cover that gap. So they were disincentivized to improve their lot in life, and they were getting screwed, and they were going to be stuck in their position because of the dangers of the short-term impact to their child's livelihood. Right? Yeah, student loans, that kind of thing. Those aspects, you need to get rid of that, those powers and forces of this world that are forcing you to suffer, like a Sisyphus. If you've been caught and trapped into this mean, spiteful situation by capitalism, or by birth, or by prejudice, or whatever the crap it is, violence, the violence of inhumanity against inhumanity, it's awful. If you need to fight your way out of it, you need to stop the pain, you need to get out of that assault situation. So you stop the pain, and then you can stop the bleeding, and then you can start the healing. Right? You get out of that situation, you stop the bleeding, you stop getting punched, and then you escape, and then you go to the hospital and you turn it over to the healing people, and you're like, oh, give me the pain medicine. So Saturn stops that crap. Mars protects you from that stuff getting further into your life. Right? And then you're free to get Jupiter to bring you sanctuary and healing, and then you get the solar stuff to transmute all that negativity into something positive and golden, and then you can get your love life fixed, and you can get your head on straight, and you get your world start manifesting this solid, healthy version of yourself. You'd use the planetary magic that we're talking about to reconstitute your life, and that's how you kind of get out of that whole situation. So yes, sorry to get that far into it, but that's like one of my main spiels about all this stuff is that this fixes everything. And that's how you work with Mars to protect yourself and diffuse those who are martial people. You go to Mars and you make offerings to them to get them out of the situation. That Venus and Mars thing is great, but also just make offerings to Mars. Offer candles and smoke, fire and smoke to Mars on a Tuesday. You can use a candle of Michael the Archangel if you're not allowed due to your circumstances to express things in fiery, angry ways, Aries ways, then express it through the Archangel Michael, who represents fire, right? Who represents all these forces of Mars in the material world. Just do that, and ask for that martial person to be diffused, because that's what it is. It's just turn off that violence, turn it off, and in your heart, in a situation like that, and this sounds hokey and I'm not guaranteeing anything, but I've seen it be effective. You picture the seal of Mars, the circle with the arrow sticking out the side, twang, you picture that symbol in your heart, and then you picture that being spoken out through your throat and your eye. Agrippa talked about it. It's amazing how well that works. you express that. You can do that with Saturn too. You can express a stillness. It works really well with dogs. You picture Saturn in your heart, and you make a little sphere of Saturn around you through your words and your eyes. You look it into being around you. You imagine that you just force it through your eyes, and you do that, and it creates this little field of this effect, and it's interesting to see what happens. Anyway, for diffusing a situation like that in a martial moment, you can conjure that martial energy by imagining that symbol of Mars, especially after you've been through the initiations, right? So that's why we do the initiations, is to harmonize ourselves with that power. When we're in the presence of Camael and Samael and Aries, when we're in their presence, and that raw force of Mars is vibrating and humming in our circle and our triangle on our table of practice, we resonate with it, right? And then when we increase our own parts of that, and then when we go out into our mundane lives, we take that recognition and that reactivation of those powers with us, and we can express that by focusing it through that symbol in our heart, and by looking it into being through our eyes, by speaking it with our words. We can just force it into being, because it's just part of our initiatory practice. So anyway, that's ways to work with that. Can Mars help someone's heart with health? Yes, Mars can help with your heart health. It can turn off what's wrong with it, right? If it's a congenital defect, like there's something wrong with the shape of it, that would be more lunar stuff, because the moon causes the heart to change shape, or rules the outer shape and form of things. If it's foundational, if it's cellular, that would be like you'd have to try to work with Saturn, and that's dangerous. Mars would be good for like people who have too much of a heartbeat, or too little, right? I mean, it depends on sort of how you'd want to do it, but it's the fieriness of things is what's ruled by Mars. It's not you got to make sure that you're using the qualities in harmony with the effects that you want. I don't know, for heart health. It depends. It would depend on how the symptoms manifest. Like if it manifests as lethargy, you'd want to increase the activity. So Venus and Mars, right? It's because you want a harmonious change. So again, that go to Venus and then go to Mars, or do a ritual on Friday in a Mars hour, or on Tuesday in a Venus hour. You can work with those energies that way, to sort of get the blend going for you, to bring that harmony and healing to the heart. But I wouldn't want to make any kind of specific recommendation. I think it would be on a case by case basis, and I think if I remember right, you know how to listen for that kind of thing, and really you want to listen to the part of you that vibrates when you think about these people, right? And this sounds hokey, and I'm sorry, but it's just, it is what it is, right? So if you listen to your own, if you do these rituals and you get initiated and you work with these spirits, you get to feeling how you get to know the feelings of these powers. And when you think about the situation and their heart problems, you can kind of think about where they're coming from, why they're expressing it that way, what it's about, and why it's necessary, and why it's happening, and how to speed up the healing or slow down the deterioration and allow for healing. You can know what to do based on kind of understanding what that expression is all about. And sometimes the answer is nothing. You can't do anything, right? It's just eat it. You gotta suck it up, and just and understanding why that is sort of, it offsets some of the crappy having to just deal with unfair things that comes with it. But yeah, let's see. Enlarged heart, sorry. So inflamed, yes, you would want to turn off that inflammation. So yes, Mars would be a good thing for that. I call attending spirits of healing in my work with clients. I can call these Mars spirits for this. I mean, you could, if you need protection and safety, but they're going to enforce laws, right? You're going to set boundaries, and they're going to enforce them. Is that what you need when you're working with people? Okay, yes, absolutely. It could be like your backups for physical healing. Oh, I see what you mean. Like, oh, okay. Yeah. Yeah, that's a great idea. I mean, sure. That makes total sense because they would actually be the ones that would probably be guiding the scalpels. They would be the ones that would understand how to cut only the parts that were harmful. So even yes, they would be great for that. If you are into that kind of thing, I would recommend getting an actual familiar spirit of Mars, just one. And I mean, you can work with others if you're into that too. However you want to do it is fine, but I would recommend getting your own uh, assistant. And actually, you might want to just work with your personal assistant, your supernatural assistant. Uh, to do all of it in one, and one of the things we can do when you're working with your supernatural assistant is empower it by taking it through the spheres, and the more you do your initiations, the more it's able to work on all that stuff. But like one spirit to work through is great. If you're into Goetia, you can work with Paimon to get a good familiar, and build them up with all the powers that you need. Or you can, like you said, you can just conjure a spirit of Mars to work with while you're doing that. Or when you're going into the thing, just to call on Camael to be with you and ask him to send the attendant spirits necessary to help eliminate any things that are causing damage and to stop things that are causing harm, right? Because you just want to make sure you're focusing on turning off the bad things. Oh yeah, cool. Right on. All right. Well, I think I'm going to have to wrap things up. We've been doing this for a little while. Looks like two hours. So, again, sorry for the haphazardry around getting this stuff out in time, but we should be able to get that straightened out. With a little bit of discipline, as long as I don't get distracted by my self righteousness. So, anyway, thanks again for everything. You guys are really making me very happy about things in life. I really appreciate everybody's interest, and it looks like it's being helpful and beneficial to people. And I hope that it's working for everybody. Do continue to put these things into practice and use them to understand how to make yourself um, be the best you can be. You know what I mean? Like have something good to do with your time. Anyway, that's my hope. So all right, cool. All right, I will see you guys next week. And you will at least get the Zoom invitations ahead of time, so that'll always be there, even if the course material is not. If this ever happens again, God forbid, or Josh actually take responsibility and not do that. Anyway, whatever. Thanks again for being here. I will talk to you again next week. Let's see. Stop that.